You have to secure zero point 0.1 Bitcoin or you will never, ever retire. Why do I say this? Look what's happening in front of us, right? We have a great wealth transfer. Like what most people think the wealth transfer is going to be is that one day they're going to wake up and people are like, give me your money, give me your money. And then everyone, the rich people are going to have all the money. No, it's very slow and silent. What are we seeing right now? We're seeing BlackRock buy up all the Bitcoin. They literally have like what 700,000 Bitcoin that they have, and the ETF has only been up since like what, like maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, like around March 2024. And currently while I'm recording this video is in July 2025, and they have almost a million Bitcoin. Do you know how crazy that is? They had 700,000 in pretty much a year, right? And that's just one company. Now let's look at MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is still like 600,000 Bitcoin. Then you have MetaPlanet still buying it. And then the US are there. They just passed a crypto bill, right? And eventually, US are going to start buying Bitcoin, right? See, me and you, we're retail investors. We only have certain amount. Maybe if we can throw 100,000, 200,000, that's a lot for us. We can throw a million, that's a lot. But when you start bringing in countries like the United States, they can throw billions, maybe even trillions. And that's just one country. Let's not talk about El Salvador. Let's not talk about China, right? Let's not talk about the countries in Europe, right? So what's going to end up happening, they're slowly buying. And then one day, it's just going to flip. The price of Bitcoin is just going to go to 1 mil. And we're going to be like, what happened? When did they buy all this Bitcoin? Like, how did they have 3 million Bitcoin? How do they have 99% of the supply? And nobody's going to know. BlackRock, 3 companies literally control and own 90% of the stock market. And they also own most of the houses, right? Now they're going to get into Bitcoin. See what's going to end up happening right now. They say most boomers have all the houses, right? And us millennials, Gen Zs, right? We're not able to own that many assets because all the rich people own everything. But Bitcoin is our one thing that we can start to accumulate now, and in the future is going to pay off, right? So let's say you have 0.1. What's going to end up happening? You can start at 0.01, and then you're going to go up to 0.05. Then you're going to start researching. You're going to read the books, The Price of Tomorrow, Thank God for Bitcoin, Why Fiat Dies, or Broken Money. You're going to start reading all these books, and your conviction is going to get better and better. So now you're going to get to 0.1 Bitcoin, right? 0.1 Bitcoin, if Bitcoin goes to 10 million, Bitcoin 1.1 would be $1 million, right? But if you're buying that right now, you're not going to stop. You're going to get to 0.5, then 0.1. To contrary belief, I don't believe that you can retire off of 0.1 Bitcoin. I think you have a good amount of money, but I don't think you're going to be able to retire. Why do I say that? If Bitcoin goes to $10 million, right? Because for 0.1 Bitcoin to be 1 million, Bitcoin has to be 10 million. Imagine how much money has to flow into Bitcoin. Imagine how much money has to be printed, right? And so what's going to end up happening is that if that much money is going to be printed, the value of the US dollar is going to be decreasing. So maybe 1 million might be like 1 million today's money, but 1 million in like 20 years, that might only be equivalent of like 200,000. That's how much buying power you're going to get. So that's why I always say still get to 1 Bitcoin. And the reason why I say do get to 0.1 is because your conviction level is going to become better and better. You're going to start learning stuff like Bitcoin has a finite supply. We've never, ever seen how it is to have a finite supply asset. See, everywhere you look, you can look at a grocery store, there's tons of ketchup, there's tons of bottles. Gold, you can always drill more gold, right? I mean, there's proof of work because it costs a certain amount of money to drill the gold, right? And so unless it's cheaper to drill than it is the actual gold, if there's not profit margin, they won't always drill the gold. And even a house, right? Like they can build unlimited houses, right? Housing slows down based off of how much workers you have, cost of labor, cost of lumber, that kind of stuff, right? But they can always build more houses. Bitcoin, you cannot get any more Bitcoin than 21 million. There'll never be 22 million. There'll never be 23 million, right? So we've never seen this. And what ends up happening, roughly somewhere around like 2030, right? Their miners are not going to be able to mine any more Bitcoin. And that's when the turning point is gonna go like this. That's when you're gonna see the asset price just inflate, right? Because right now, miners can still mine Bitcoin, right? There's still Bitcoin. So people aren't really seeing that scarcity effect. But when that happens and you can't mine anymore, people are gonna be like, whoa, that's gonna be breaking news. And you're gonna look back in 2025, when BlackRock was secretly buying it in your face, billions of dollars every single day. The ETF is constantly getting inflows. And I didn't even talk about another conversation, right? What's going to end up happening is that Trump just passed a law, right? And he passed this law. Well, no, he signed an executive order where now you can start investing into Bitcoin in your 401k. That's a whole new capital system. That means people can naturally just every paycheck buy Bitcoin and never sell it for what? Till they're 65. And I'm about to be 30 this year. That's 35 years for me. Imagine if I'm buying Bitcoin every single paycheck for 35 years and I'm never selling it. That's Bitcoin that most people will never have. That's why 0.1 Bitcoin is still very impressive, because at a certain point, people are gonna be happy just to say like, yo, I have 100 Satoshis. I have 1,000,000 Satoshis. So if you don't know what Satoshis are, Satoshis are like a smaller unit of measure than a 1 Bitcoin, because there's going to be a point where it's like people are having can only buy 0.00001 Bitcoin, but you can say in Satoshi like values instead, right? And so that's going to be easier way of measuring, right? So like you have pennies, you have 10 cents, you have $50, $100. It's going to be easier to say buy Satoshi. So once that absolute scarcity comes, that's when you're going to see the asset price inflate. Another thing, right now, the traditional money system, right? Most people are investing into the 401k, and that invests into the S&P 500. So S&P 500 roughly maybe around is roughly mainly around 10, 12% a year, right? It fluctuates. But what it comes to be is that the M2 money supply, that is the amount of dollars that are printed every single year. That is the same. It might increase about 10 to 12%. So what I'm saying is that the S&P 500 doesn't actually increase 10 to 12% a year. The money supply increases 10 to 20%, 10 to 12% a year. And what I'm saying is that the S&P 500 just tracks how much money is printed. So you're saving all your money in S&P 500, but you're not really getting ahead. You're putting 400, 500, 10, 15% of your paycheck every single month for 40 years just to keep the same amount of dollars you have when you're 65? Like, that's a horrible strategy. Realistically, if you invest in that Bitcoin, what's going to happen? Your purchasing power increases. And why do I say that? In about 2020, it might have took you about 40 Bitcoin to buy the average house. Now, it takes less than 4 Bitcoin to buy an average house. And what's that going to be in 2030, in 5 years? Maybe it's going to be 1 Bitcoin. Maybe it's going to be half a Bitcoin. Maybe it's going to be 0.2 Bitcoin. Maybe even 0.1 Bitcoin. What happens when we come to a future where 0.1 Bitcoin buys your house? That's life-changing. But if you guys like this kind of content, put in the comments what you guys want to see next, and check out this video right